Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and today we have an updated Peasantry template guide that takes advantage of some of the new gameplay mechanisms and building changes in the new Mandate of Heaven DLC. Now previously I have made a Peasantry template guide on this channel that used lower level settlements to maximize your food production and peasantry income, but with the introduction of Fervour and some key building changes to the administrative office building chain, rebel farming has once again become the best form of early game economy. So let's take a look at some ways we can revamp our old build. So in our previous Peasantry template guide, which I will link in the description below, we ended up featuring this template called the Efficient Peasantry Income build that featured a small city build with a level 5 land development, government support, and tax collection building. In terms of raw income and food production, not including any bonuses from reforms, administrators, assignments, fertility bonuses, seasonal effects, or county productions, we have 810 peasantry income and 8 food production with this build. You can increase this income by quite a bit if you switch the land development to selling food instead, but your food production will take a big hit. And this build is super efficient because all 3 building chains here can be maxed out to level 5 with just a small city build, while most other building chains require a small regional city to unlock level 5 building upgrades. So while none of these 3 building chain here were actually changed very much in the Mandate of Heaven DLC, the tax collection building chain got a small addition, as it now reduces local Commandery fervor by the same amount as the public order penalty on each level. Now, we talked about fervor already in many of the Mandate of Heaven preview videos, so definitely go check those out if you're still curious. So I'm also going to save a little bit of time and not go too much in detail about them here. The only thing that is really relevant to our discussion here is that when you have high fervor in your Commandery, you'll receive additional public order penalty. For example, at maximum fervor of 100, you will lose additional 24 points of public order every turn. While this can be problematic for growing your population and will eventually lead to rebellions, it is actually an opportunity for a great source of early game income, especially since in this new patch, the administrative office building also received a huge change. Here, we can see the main branch of this building chain leading up to the level 5 palace building. Not only is the same fervor reducing mechanism added to this building chain similar to the tax collection, you now also receive peasantry income and public order penalty from this building chain as well, which is new with this Mandate of Heaven patch. This change is made to both the 182 start and the 190 start, so it's definitely something you want to look out for, even though in the 190 start, none of these buildings will have fervor change. Now, with this new building chain providing additional peasantry income and public order penalty, it makes it almost exact copy of the tax collection building chain. Of course, this building chain is not free, but it is still a fine addition to our peasantry template build. But before we add this building to our build, one thing to note here is that while the level 3, 4, and 5 tax collection building requires only the small city to build, the level 2 administrative office already requires a small city, then the level 3 upgrade requires a small regional city, and the level 4 and 5 requires a regional city and an imperial city respectively. So this is a huge restriction. So for our build, we're probably only going to be able to add the level 2 administrative office building into our build and accommodate it. So it's fine. It's just not optimum. It's much more geared towards being a late game build, but we can still add it in for a nice fervor reducing bonus in the early game and for a nice boost to peasantry income while helping us speed up rebel generation. So if we try to add this building into our existing build, we also have to upgrade our settlement to a city for a 4th building slot. And after adding it in with this build, we now have at least 4 food, 1,040 income per turn, and more importantly, we have minus 26 public order per turn from the buildings alone. Now, all these numbers will change depending on which reforms you have active and which assignments or administrators you have, but this is just a general baseline for you to use. And this build is not only great for farming rebels in the early game, it is also a fine build to continue into the late game for commanderies with agricultural specialty counties such as farmland, lumberyard, and livestock farms. But now the question is, what if you start out in the game in commanderies without peasantry related counties, but you still want to take advantage of rebel farming? So here's the good news. there is actually a much more efficient build that suits industry and commerce commanderies perfectly. So what you need here for this type of template is you just need a small city build. And before you go off to build your administrative office building, which will cost you 1,000 for a level 1 and 2,000 for the level 2 upgrade, what you want to build in your first slot is a military building. And here we're going to build the conscription office from the conscription building chain. This is because you will receive additional 10% discount on all your government buildings. So your entire administrative office building will cost you 300 less. Not only will you get some savings here, all armies you recruit here will start out at +2 rank. Now, this is pretty good for the early game since you're probably going to need to build an entire fresh army after disbanding most of your early units. Even if you don't disband your early units, you need to flush out the army because you don't start out with a full army. So having a conscription building can definitely strengthen your early game recruits by giving them extra morale, armor, and ammo. And if you want, you can even upgrade this conscription building farther to rank 3, which is the max ranks for most factions. And at rank 3, you'll gain 2 additional seasonal retinue deployment slots. These slots are basically the limits on how many generals you can summon onto the field per turn. So if you want to go rebel farming in multiple commanderies and you need to recall them to heal, by giving yourself more seasonal retinue deployment slots, you can shuffle your generals around better. And you will need at least 4 such deployment slots if you want to exploit the moving on the same turn mechanism, where you recall the first general you summon to give movement points to the existing generals. Now, in the long term, this building can also contribute greatly to helping you reduce your redeployment saving by allowing it to reach 100%. Then you can achieve free teleportation of your entire armies across your empire. And at level 3, you also gain +3 rank instead of +2 to all new recruits. Of course, if you happen to be playing as Ma Teng, Dong Zhuo, or Cao Cao, who has faction unique conscription buildings that goes up to all the way to level 5, you can feel free to upgrade it here as well to enjoy your faction unique bonuses. Another similar approach is to use the patrol building from the military infrastructure building chain. With this building, you will also get the same discount, gain some additional public order bonus, which is actually a bad thing here because you want a lower public order to help generate rebels. But you also get additional fervor reduction, even though the image asset shown here was taken before the Mandate of Heaven DLC, so it's not shown. But in this DLC, other than the 3 government buildings of tax collection, temple, and administrative office, both the military infrastructure and the grain storage will also help you reduce fervor. Basically, if it affects public order before, it will also affect fervor now in this new patch. And the third advantage of this building chain is that you will gain a new set of retinues as garrisons, as well as siege weapons on the wall for defensive fight. So in another sense, you might not even need to station 3 generals here on a permanent basis to farm rebels, as your small city will be strong enough to defend itself with the help of a military infrastructure building. Lastly, the most fun strategy here is to actually build the forge building and upgrade it to level 2. At first glance, this building is pretty bad and only provide a nice one-time recruitment discount. But the secret to this strategy is that what you want to do is you want to spawn some rebels and let those rebels take over your commandery. Because once Yellow Turbans take over a commandery, they will automatically convert all existing building to their Yellow Turban counterpart. What this means is that your level 2 forge from the base game will be automatically converted to the level 2 Yellow Turban Forge building shown here. If you look at this forge is now generating you 160 base industry income, a 20% boost to industry income overall, and a whopping 20% replenishment rate, plus a little bit of military supplies on top of this. So all you need to do is retake your settlement after the Yellow Turban takes it and not convert this building back to enjoy all these benefits for yourself. Now, the only thing here is that you will lose the 10% discount to government building, but if you're going to eventually convert this to an industry and commerce income building, you're not going to be upgrading your administrative office anyways, so this 10% loss doesn't mean much to you. And even if you're going to spend a little bit extra money, who really cares when you're getting additional industry income base and 20% boost and 20% replenishment, which is game changing. Now, If your moral compass still does not allow you to exploit rebel farming because you think it's an exploitive reason in the game, let me try to convince you with 8 advantages to rebel farming. First off, in the early game, money is a luxury item. So with this rebel farming build, which largely centers around tax collection building, we can save a lot of money by building our commanderies cheaply and use that money saved on a strong first army. Second, it helps keep your generals busy and help them gain experience and level them up so they can get their awesome active abilities faster like Heartseeker and God of War. And since all you need to do to win against these rebels is just have 3 generals without any retinues, these battles will often be heroic victories, which will grant your generals additional satisfaction points, which is another luxury item in the early game, especially on higher difficulties. Next, you will also be able to farm ancillary items off rebels who will sometime carry them. Since there's no other way to create ancillary items in the game, you just have to randomly wait for them to spawn at beginning turn. This is actually a great way to generate new ancillary items for your faction. And if you happen to be playing as Liu Bei, Sun Jian, or Dong Zhuo, or any faction that has a battle-related faction unique resource, these rebels can be the best way to farm those as well. And after each battle, you will also be getting post-battle loot as well to pad onto your early game treasury. Now, the most interesting strategy, and my favorite idea from this entire guide, is the ability to use these rebels to help you convert base game Forge to the extremely powerful Yellow Turban Forge, which will not only bolster your economy, but it will also help you fight off early game threats and expand much faster with a 20% replenishment boost. Lastly, if I still can't convince you to exploit this strategy for repeated rebel farming, then it's okay. Let's just use this build to clear your Fervour and kill off a few rebel that were going to spawn anyways because of the high Fervour, and transition this build smoothly to an industry and commerce build while maximizing your savings. So in this sense, the first building you will want to demolish once you get your Fervour down and you no longer want to farm rebels is you take your first military building away in the first slot and replace it with a state workshop. Then while you're building your state workshop and 1 turn away from completion, you want to demolish your administrative office building and put a private workshop there right after. Then as you put your private workshop building on build mode, demolish your tax collection and build it in there to complete your transition to a more natural build. This transition is pretty elegant in my opinion, since you are going to be using your military building in the beginning to help reduce your administrative office build costs, and then use the 25% combined discount from the 2 government buildings to save on the state workshop. Then for the cheaper private workshop, you're only going to be managing a 15% discount, which is still great. And lastly, for the inn building, you will have the 20% from the 2 industry buildings that you have just built. It's a bit of penny pinching, but once you get used to it, as myself, it just feels like the natural way to do things. So this wraps up our guide. I hope you will all consider adding rebel farming to your strategy and use this build to help tame early game Fervour. And most importantly, try to steal a few forge buildings from those pesky yellow turbans. Thank you guys for watching, and see you all next time. Bye!